right, I think I have successfully started this stream. Got this nonsense, get rid of all that. Don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. And let's make this nice and small. Well, space. Okay, cool. Awesome. Cool. I'm thinking here. Actually, we're going to start a new challenge. How are we doing on this class? I think, we got one more module after this. We got web security. All right, some ASU students are starting to roll in with their orange belts. Looks like they're working ahead. Cool. We get a whole bunch of orange belts. Like we do the monthly ranking, it kind of falls off the rest of the course. So we got random people, the worldwide competitors going and getting their orange belt, which is awesome to see. Okay. So what the heck? I thought I made that fast. Whatever. All right. Twitch chat. We're rolling. We are rolling. I'm not even going to check that. I'm so confident. Okay. So we are in CSE365, spring 2024. We are rapidly approaching the end of the semester. I mean, there's probably still, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? I don't know. However many weeks it is. Did I update the syllabus? Let's see. Did I say when everything is due by? Hopefully I did. As generous as I can possibly make it. Is there a to-do one here? Be pretty awkward. Nope. Last. Where's the late policy? May 5th. Yeah, this. Cool. All right. So yeah, we're rapidly approaching. We got less than a month left in this course. We got 2 modules. We got web security, and then we got I don't know what it's called, program security, binary exploitation after this. And let's see here, how much time we got left on this module? I feel like we started it somewhere recently. Yeah, we got a week left. Cool. Probably you hopefully found the last module to be somewhat easier than some of the other modules. Access control, a little bit more straightforward of a module to kind of give you guys a little bit of a break. Don't expect that to be the case with web security and binary exploitation. These are probably some of the harder modules, if not the hardest modules. We're really getting into true exploitation here now that we have a good grasp of what's going on with some of these underlying technologies. So I am going to start up level 1. I'm not going to be working on level 1. I'm going to be demoing a whole bunch of ideas to kind of get you into a good mindset. To be able to explain what goes on in level 6, because I can log in successfully. Level 6, an unknown database structure. All right, we can briefly take a look at that. If you can log in successfully, that sounds pretty promising. But we can briefly take a look at that at some point here. Actually, you know what? We'll even just open it up right now. PS1 equals that. Code server challenger. Okay, so something I'll highly recommend. I think I mentioned this with cryptography. This camera, this tripod is terrible. Why does this tripod shake so much? I'm going to have to figure that out for next semester. I don't think it's going to be a solve at this semester's thing, but it's just, this table this table is terrible. That's the issue. Why is this so movable? All right, whatever. Like I said with cryptography module, right, where you're looking at the source code of the challenge, highly recommend you do the same thing here in these web security challenges. You might not exactly totally understand what's going on, right? We're using probably some Python libraries you're not super familiar with. But, if you just kind of read it as English, I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic, but hopefully it's somewhat readable and will kind of sort of say what's going on here. Right, if we look at level 2, there's basically 2 lines of code in level 2. The first line says request.args.getTimezone So you probably don't know this in Python, but maybe you do if you work with Python. The second argument to .get is the default. So that basically means if there's not an argument named time zone, default to UTC. Otherwise, use whatever that time zone argument is. And then we go and do subprocess check output. TZ equals that time zone thing. Run the date command. Shell equals true. Encoding equals Latin. And that's what we're returning. So it's somewhat readable, hopefully. So if we look at something like level 6, you're saying you're able to log in. Well, there's no concept of login in level 6, so that's going to be a little bit tricky for you, right? We don't really have something that means log in, right? If we look at something like level 4, we do have some sort of concept of log in. Like whatever the heck the login state means, there's some sort of login state here in level 4. You'll see there's a bit more code. It's not too much code. It's not, especially where we're super zoomed in, 113 through 139. So what, 36 lines of code or 26 lines of code? I don't know, whatever the math says. Not too much lines of code. Level 6, we really don't even have an if in here, so it's going to be hard to say that there's a state. If we want to read this as, English/Connor explains what's going on here, we have this table name thing, which is a hash of the flag, ended with 0xFFFFFFF. So it's going to be like a table with like a number after it, basically is what that is meaning. And then we create table if not exists that table name. So it's some sort of random-ish name because it's derived from the flag. You don't know the flag, so you don't know the name of this table. And we create this table if it doesn't exist, and we immediately load it up. You'll see a lot of these challenges do this kind of weird syntax that we don't even talk about in the videos. It doesn't really matter too much. This is how you can kind of preload a table and set it up with some data if that table doesn't already exist. So we run this, and the first time it creates the table, you make a request to this again, and it doesn't have to recreate the table because the table has already been created. But on the first time, we got to create it, and we load it up with just one row. We load it up with this flag as username, question mark as password, pass in flag that kind of parameterizes into this question mark thing. This is how we prevent SQL injection, something we'll talk about a little bit in this office hours here. Then we get some sort of query from the request.args. We execute select username from that table name thing where username is like query. You'll notice, spoiler alert, we don't see a question mark here. If you ever see an F string for a SQL query, you should be getting a little bit nervous. Now this part's totally fine because user input does not make its way into this, right? This is it's not a static string here, but it's not user controllable, right? It's dependent on the flag. If the user somehow could control what was in this flag thing, it would be at least quasi-user controllable, but it still wouldn't actually be an issue even if the user controlled this flag thing because it gets hashed, which means it gets turned into a number. And probably there's not a table, some number thing here that's all that interesting. You can imagine maybe there would be. I've seen vulnerabilities, for example, that have to do with, I think I've seen it in PHP or maybe it was in JavaScript, where you'd get this number that was something like, is a very different context, but to get you really creatively thinking. I've seen a context where it would be something like a hash came out to like 1E, like something like this or whatever. Maybe it wasn't a hash. How did that? No, a hash, but not turned into a number, just as like hex or something. And it worked out where like this would get treated as like an exponential number with an E, and then it got all weird. I honestly don't remember what the heck was going on with that vulnerability, but there are times where you could unanticipated, like you have your data mangled in some pretty crazy way, but it still is a useful thing. You can go and find something that hashes to something that looks like this, and You can get very creative, but you know, it's a whole different path. Either way, it doesn't matter. We don't have control over the flag. That's just a fun little side tangent. But you know, you probably got some control over this query, so you're probably thinking, you know, a little SQL injection here. You get nervous whenever you see this. Get less nervous whenever you see this. It's basically your heads up for SQL injection in these levels. Different languages have different forms of what some of this might look like, but that's what's going on here. And anyways, it joins together all of the usernames. Now, it's not all that interesting, right? If we get the username, we're going to see flag come out when we do this query thing. So basically the idea is like this would be like a search box on a website or something where you can search for something and you're searching for this query something. If you pass nothing, it turns out you get this thing. If we read the SQL docs, this thing using a like operator, this is like the match anything. This would be like, if you know regex at this point, it would be the equivalent of that. Oops. This in regex is this in like syntax within SQL. So matches anything by default, which means we'd see all the usernames come back. Not so great though, right? We're trying to get the flag. Username is in the password. We're not getting passwords. We're getting usernames. Got some SQL injection stuff going on here though that I'm going to get creative about. That's what I'll say about that for now. You can get real creative with what goes in as this query. Think SQL injection. Now it's going to be tricky here with this table name. It's a little bit of a mess. But it turns out that one of these lecture videos is actually not useless. So this lecture video is not useless. Even if you think you already know SQL, it's going to have some good advice for you in here that will be highly relevant in this challenge. Okay. Let's talk about web security. So I'm going to go in and make dir web security. Let's see, web security. And let's create server.py. Okay, so in this case, you'll see in this assignment, we're using Flask as our thing that takes care of a lot of the web parsing details for us and does a lot of HTTP like things. Like it has this concept of a redirect, it has this concept of a session, we can parse stuff off the request. You know, like you think I could write this all in assembly. This whole assignment could have been written in assembly or something. And as we all know now, right, web servers can be written in assembly. There's no reason it's not. It's just this is the higher level way of thinking. It's a little bit easier, a little bit less dealing with registers, a little bit quicker to write. So we're going to stick to that style. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a very simple web app to get us started. This is really all we need to create a web app. We need that one, we need that one. And I think all we need is like app.run. We'll do that. We'll say that this thing runs on localhost. And I think that's about it. Let's see. Python server.py. Boom, look at this. We got ourselves a web server. It is up and running. We'll go ahead and create this. ps1 equals that. And if we curl localhost, something comes back, right? If we kill this web server, I mean, you might not be excited about what comes back, 404 not found, but it turns out that that is a response. This is called nothing's listening on port 80. We're not speaking HTTP. We're speaking HTTP. So we run the server, and obviously it's not very exciting. It turns out by default with Flask, with these 3 lines of code we have here, we're just going to get 404s for everything with this default 404 response. That's just what's going to happen on every single request. If you want to see the actual full request, we can see curl v localhost. We will see we get 404 not found. It sends this server header, this date header, this content type header. We get content length, connection close, and this. It just sends that every time. Okay, if we want to make it actually send something a little more interesting, we can say app.routes this def index. This is kind of how you normally call it. And we could return hello world. Cool. Let's do that. And let's make sure our server works. And look at that. We get a hello world. We probably want a new line though, because otherwise we get our $sign where we don't want our $sign. Okay, cool. Hopefully that makes sense, right? We just built a web server way quicker than you probably built your assembly web server. So what I'm going to do actually, there's a way to get this into debug mode so I don't have to keep restarting the server. How do I do this? Flask help. Flask run. Flask app equals server.py. Okay. Cool. Is this going to be in debug? No, it's not in debug mode. Oh, --debug. Okay. How do I make it? You know what? We'll roll with this. Hopefully this debugger pin does not matter. I don't think this can matter for us. Okay. And then, well, now we're not on localhost port 80. By default, it's port 5000. It just turns out that's what it's doing. Okay, whatever. We're back to it working. And the reason I did that is this is like a little Flask thing. Turns out we don't need this anymore. This is not doing anything. Turns out now, though, I can say, like, I can update this file, and if I rerun it, it's automatically updating. Look at that. Pretty cool stuff that we got going on here in Flask. So I update it, boom. Okay. What's the advantage of spinning up a web app like this rather than using something like mHTTP server? Yeah, so Python also has this mHTTP server thing. That's just going to return, I mean, I can show you what it does. We'll even do Python mHTTP server, this thing right here. If you see that this spins up, this is a very specific web application. So you're right, it did spin up a web server. But if I, what is it on 80 or 8000, curl localhost 8000. This is just a very specific thing, okay? This is, it lists a bunch of directories. It's basically like a file explorer on the web that it boots up. So that's all that does. Flask allows us to do like whatever we want, right? Like, so now we could do, here's like some quick dive into Flask. If I say like int a, now it takes this parameter a, and I could do return a plus 1. Here's like the +1 function, right? That we get this very dynamic looking request. And if I say 42, guess what? 43 just came back. Probably we want, we'll even do a little bit of this action. And 43 comes back. Now I say like 47. Like we got ourselves a dynamic web app that we can do arbitrary code for versus just like list files, which is sometimes it's nice to have this like quick remote file server thing. It's super useful, depending if you need a remote file server thing. But that's all that does. This allows us, we write whatever code we want. We could re-implement Facebook here if we wanted to, right? We could have a login page. We could have account management stuff. We just like start building up whatever web application we want. So for example, let's actually use that to segue in. If I take some, we won't even specifically require an int. We'll just say a message, or we'll even say a name. So now this thing takes a name, and we'll call this like hello. This doesn't matter. All that matters is like we're routing. So there's a little bit of like Flask isms here. This is the route, and you have these braces here, or these what are these? Not square braces. I don't know, less than, greater than. And this is like a dynamic parameter now. So it'll match just about anything, not literally anything, but a lot of things. And now we take in a name. So this ends up as a parameter to this function. And now it's just like a Python function that's taking in a name. And now I could say, you know, hello name, right? And so now if I say Connor, it says hello Connor, and make it uppercase C, it'll do uppercase. If I want it to automatically do that, I could call title on that, and now this still works. And that's that. Now this is where things maybe get a little more interesting. Normally you wouldn't do something exactly like this. So if let's see here. If I go into desktop, so we get ourselves a web browser. What's this? That. Okay, cool. And I open up a web browser. So we'll say Firefox localhost 5000. And we're going to get a not found because we only got one route and it requires just something. So if I say Connor, it's going to return this, but normally you wouldn't just be returning a literal string, right? Normally we'd be returning like HTML. So I might be like HTML here, HTML here, and then I'd say like body, and we'd say body, and maybe we'll just throw this in a nice H1 tag. Okay, so we got all this HTML stuff going on. Maybe I even do a Python multi-string to be real fancy. And then I could do this and like this, and look at this. We're writing a web server that can return some sweet HTML. And so now if I take a look at this web application and I refresh in my browser, right? My browser knows how to parse HTML. It parses this H1 tag to be like this right here. And we could do something like, we'd even do some extra indentation. We could say like style equals color red or something, right? Make sure we would do normally double quotes. I think either one would work here. We can do something like this. Oh, I'm refreshing the wrong thing. And I can refresh this and look at this. We got color in the browser. This is the whole idea of the web, right? Of returning HTML is that we return these cool pages, and I could, do whatever I want, and I could be like, welcome to my blog. Look at this. Boom, boom, boom. Maybe instead I want actually an HR here, which will give me a nice little line. And I could, I don't know, center this. I think there's a center tag in HTML. I don't know HTML that well. Only enough to create pwn.college's website. Yeah, look at this. It's centered now. I don't know. You start writing whatever the heck you want, right? And there's an issue here, though, which is, okay, so we're taking user input here, right? We're taking Connor, and we're just like reflecting that back out into the output. So what's interesting is, and I'm actually going to, so that it's clear to see, we're going to get rid of this H1 tag. We're going to make this a paragraph tag, so we'll put that back there. What's interesting here is that I could do like this. So I could put square, or I keep saying square braces, angled braces. I don't know, why am I losing the name? It does not match this. It's going to be so clever that this is just going to work. I think the issue is that this doesn't match that. Let me think here. Here's what we'll do. We're going to make it a little bit more. We're not going to use total Flask style, whatever. Actually, if I do this, will that work? If I say that this is a path, let's see. It does. Okay, ignore that. We'll just say that this is a path. This is just a particular Flask sort of thing. But you can imagine the general framework that just allows you to take anything. Technically, without this, it was matching just for string values, which are a specific subset of characters that are allowed. Path kind of opens that up to being like anything, including more slashes and stuff at the end. turns out also these angle brackets. So what's interesting here is that this is just mirroring HTML. So if I put HTML tags into my input, hopefully is this visible enough? Someone yell if it's not visible. If I put HTML braces into this, it'll reflect those braces right back to us. And maybe that's cool. Maybe you look at that as a feature. It's like, sweet, I can like have a bolded thing come back. But the issue is that I can put any sort of HTML in here. And maybe you're still thinking this isn't a concern, but if I put this, maybe, see what happens. Browsers get more and more sophisticated. Why is this not running? Oh, it's kind of funny. This title thing is actually messing us up. There's all sorts of nuances here. Okay. What just happened here now, if we get rid of the title thing, you would have noticed there was an uppercase A for alert. There's ways to get around that. So even though it uppercase, I'd have to look into how we would get around that, but there would be ways to get around that. Probably. I don't know. You have to get real clever, potentially. But I would not trust making things title case as your security mechanism here. You'll see the JavaScript just executed. So it said hello, and then what ended up in here is a script tag. So you'll see, again, if I inspect this, what just happened, no, where is it? This, inspector. What just happened is it has hello script alert 1 script, and that's how you run JavaScript on a website. Now, you can imagine, of course, if I just go and run curl localhost, and even if I put, let's see here, I can get this right here. If I put script alert 1 script, right, now we've got this script tag in here, and it doesn't really affect curl, because guess what? Curl doesn't run, it doesn't run JavaScript, so it doesn't really matter. But you know, the normal user is running this in their browser, is running JavaScript. And is this an issue? In this web application, it's not an issue. Who really cares, right? So a user sends you this JavaScript and it sends alert 1. Who the heck cares? The issue comes once you have more complicated web applications. So for example, if I have this login thing, so if I say login, and we're going to take a, how do we do this? We'll say, give me a request thing. We'll say app.routes. So this would be a very standard thing you might write. And we'd even do methods equals, let's see how fast I can write this logic of a login page here. And we say, let's say if requests dot method equals get. So if it's a get, let's return some HTML. We need to create a login page, body, form, path. How do I do this? This is where ChatGPT would be so good. Here's what, you know what, we're even going to do it. Why write the login page for ourselves when ChatGPT will do it? Write my hello world login functionality, please. Okay, let's not mess around with this. Otherwise we're gonna be debugging it for 5 minutes probably. It'll just spit us out a very nice login. Hello? Is ChatGPT down right now, or what's going on here? Try it. Oh, there we go. Okay. It'll figure it out. Come on, there we go. Quit chit-chatting. Give me my code here. Display the login form. Yeah, it knows what I was about to do. See, form action login method equals post. So this is going to set up an HTML page that will be able to, when they click on this submit button, it'll make a post request off. And if it's a post, it's going to extract the username and password. So basically, if you get, which means you just normally visit the page, it'll do this. Otherwise, it'll do post. If it's a post request, it'll do a post request when we click the submit button. So it'll hit back to here, gets the username, gets the password. Yeah, good enough. If username equals admin and password equals secret, hello, blah, 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 welcome back. Do some session stuff as well to track that they are logged in. Right, as we talked about in, oh boy, it's still chit-chatting. Oh boy, sorry. It's even warning against what's going to happen here at the moment. As we talked about when building a web server and the HTTP module, we need to use stuff like cookies in order to track state, right? If we do cookies, the browser will automatically keep sending the cookie. What is going on with ChatGPT today? Start talking. There we go. Flask has this concept of a session which correlates with cookies. Okay, we don't need to install Flask session. Maybe we do. Probably not. Blah, 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 blah. For server side, yeah, we don't need server side. We'll give it a secret, sure. This is how it protects the cookie. It does cryptography using the secret to encrypt the cookie. And so it's not even encrypting it. It's really just signing the cookie. It's using this secret to sign the cookie. And we can talk about why. There's reasons that you sign the cookie. And the reason is, right, you tell the user, hey, here's a cookie. I want you to start sending this to me every time. And maybe that cookie basically just says user equals admin or something, right? So that every time I make a request, the browser is going to send user equals admin as a cookie to my server. Anyone can send any cookie they want, right? You could forge a cookie. You just say whatever you want. This secret key is so that the server can use this to sign that message, which says user equals admin. And now thinking back to cryptography, we have this signed cookie. And you can't forge a signed cookie. You can forge a cookie, but you can't forge a signed cookie because unless you know that, you can, but you need to know the secret. So that's the idea here. We'll just make it your secret key here and assume that it's an actual good secret. Cool, look at this. Wow, we got ourselves a web app. Look at us go. Okay. So we got this. Whatever. We'll leave its comments. We will say, cool. Optional config. Yeah, we're not doing this Flask session stuff. This would allow us, so I said there's a lot of ways to do cookies. All that matters is that the cookie is just sent back to the server every time you make a request. You have a couple of options. You could put all the data for that cookie into the cookie itself. So for example, user equals admin could just be the cookie value, and then you sign it and send it, and then they send it back. But you might imagine there's a lot of state. Like you might want to store, in the pwn.college world, what levels they've solved and all this stateful information. At some point, you probably move to a database or some sort of state maintaining thing. And instead of sending like a cookie like user equals or all this data, you just say like session equals. And then you use that session as an identifier to look up other stateful information that matters. And that's what this Flask session thing is like, in this case, it looks like ChatGPT was trying to say, all right, here's how we can set up a file system session type, which means it'll store all the session information off to files on the disk. Or you could do a database. Normally you would use something like, it's called Redis, to do fast in-memory stuff. But we don't really care about that right now. Okay, let's see what this sweet web app is. What is this shit? Oh, I hit Control K. I don't know. It probably is by default Control K works. I don't remember if I have a custom key binding that gives me like Emacs key bindings, but Control K kills to the end of the line is basically what K is for. It's kill, which is very aggressive, but that's what it is. Okay, so we have this web app that was written for us by ChatGPT. Let's see that this web app does something. Okay, look at this. We hit the default page and it says you are not logged in. Log in here. And now I can log in and I can say, hello world. Look at it. It even makes it a correct password field. Click submit. Our browser knows it. It's like, hey, do we want to save this? This is our browser being smart. And then this says, hey, invalid username or password. Please try again. Well, we got to refresh the page to go back here. But you know what? We got ourselves a working web app. And if we look into the source code, we'll see that ChatGPT generated a nice little thing. This is normally where you'd hit a database using something like SQL. So you'd use SQL here rather than just like hard coding a single user into your web code. You'd go and search to see, is there a row in my database that has a username of admin and a password of secret? But here we've got it just baked in. So we can say admin secret, we click submit, and look at us, we are logged in. It says, hello admin, welcome back. And all we can do now is log out. That's what ChatGPT generated for us. Very cool. Okay, so if we look here at this application tab, where is it? Storage, cookies, look at this. Okay, we've got this session cookie. And this session cookie has this value here. And I'll even try to copy it out. Let's see here. Is that right? That. This thing right here. This is our session cookie. And you might be thinking to yourself, that looks base 64 if you're curious what the heck this thing is. And you would be right. This is looking base 64E. Import base 64. And if we look at this, there's a bunch of dots. Normally these are like dot separated. One of these things is going to be the signature. One of these things is going to be the data. And if we do base 64, B64 decode, you just arbitrarily, I mean, realistically, I know how Flask is doing this. We need some padding. If we add a little equal sign here, you'll see all this cookie says is username admin. And how does that work? Well, we used Flask and we said session username equals username. So we stored username equals admin right here in this cookie. And so that's what it can do every time we hit a page. So for example, we check this thing. This is how it knows to say hello, blah, 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 welcome back. And it does that because it's just pulling from the session. So if there's a username in the session, which means it does an analysis of that cookie and make sure that the signature on that cookie is correct. This other part of the cookie, this stuff right here, has to do with that signature, which is based on that secret. So basically, it's taking this portion, this first portion, it's like hashing it, and then it's signing it using the secret, and it's making sure that's all correct. Otherwise, it says you are not logged in. Cool. Now, going back to this thing right here that's just hanging out, if we look back at this page and we go back now to scripts, alert one script, right, and we get this pop-up, this in and of itself is not an issue. Or, I mean, it's starting to become more of an issue because when I hit this page, I have this cookie. Now we've got a little bit of an issue, which is that Flask has some very nice sane defaults here. How do I configure this? Well, let's roll with what we've got. What we can do here is get our browser to start doing actions. So for example, one of the things that exists here is this logout function. So if I go here to localhost 5000, we are currently logged in, as we know, right? Hello admin, welcome back. So something I can do is, maybe not JavaScript, but HTML, is I can force the browser to hit this logout page. So if I do image, if we create an image and I say source equals slash, right? So we do this, and we'll see that this like little broken image thing showed up, which is totally cool. We could also let's see here. Pwn College. Go into Pwn College. We'll go. Do we have an image somewhere? Isn't this an image? What is this pointing at? Or we can do like. Oh, we've got our belts. Let's grab this orange belt, right? How does that work? Well, it's just an image that points to something like this, right? Source equals this thing, which causes our web browser to make a request to that something. And if I change this now, does this paste, and make this be https pwn.college /themes, dojo theme. Right now it says hello, massive orange belt, exclamation point, right? And the way that it works is it had to create a web request. If I look at this network, we'll see that it made some requests. It also tried to find this favicon, whatever thing, and then it made a request here, made a request here, and it got this back. Well, we can also make it, instead of pointing at a thing that is actually an image, I can make it point at /logout. And now it didn't exactly give us a very exciting image, but now if I come back here and I try to refresh, it'll say you are not logged in. So if someone sent me this link and I clicked on it while I was logged in and I just didn't pay attention, at the end of this URL looks really weird, and you could do URL shortener stuff. If you think about like phishing, right, you do a URL shortener, do something to mask the fact that this looks pretty funky. Suddenly they click on my link and they've been logged out, right? Which, okay, sure, that's boring. Who really cares that I'm logged out? But this could be anything, right? So for example, I could say session cash equals 1337. So you log in and you have $1337, and I can do app.routes delete money, right? Def delete money. And I could do session cash equals 0. And then we'll redirect back to the index also. Why not? And if I do this now, we gotta log back in real quick. So we'll do admin secret. And we'll make this also say, you have, boom, boom, boom. Right, we're just writing a random little web app that does something that you could hopefully imagine, right? A banking service, for example. Cash. Is it cash? What do we call this thing? Cash. You have session cash. Refresh that. Hit this, right? You have a $1337, and someone makes me click on delete money, right? And then I refresh. I got $0. Someone just stole all my money by clicking on that, right? This could be arbitrarily interesting. Hopefully it's very clear. And we're not really just constrained to images. We can start writing JavaScript that might do more interesting, complex interactions. And it's like, all this is because it's reflecting this back to us, right? If I go back to this curl example, right? It's just reflecting whatever we put in here back at us. And it looks like this is the theme of a lot of these levels here in here. So we also have this in the context of something like command injection. So we might, for example, do a little bit of a, how do I do this? Let's think of a random command we might want to run. We might we might cat Etsy password or something and grep for some username. So we'll say something like whatever we input here. And it'll end with this. So if I search for hacker, oops, we got that backwards. If I search for this, hacker comes back, and we have this whole line or whatever. And so if I make, and maybe I want to be able to search for a user in my Etsy password file. So I run this, I create app.route, we'll call it search, def search, and we'll say, yeah, we'll do this. Query equals request.params query .get query, and we will do OS, or we'll do subprocess check outputs this, make this an F string, search for our query. Maybe we'll even put a little dot star in here, make it real fun. And how does this work? If I return, is this right? I think we need a shell equals true. Let's see here. I do now search question mark query equals hacker. Not thrilled about that one. Request. I think it's args. Oh, need to import subprocess. You'll see that I'm running Flask in debug mode, which means it's giving me a sweet stack trace. Import subprocess. Let's see here. Boom, look at that. Okay, see now I can like search through here. I can search for root. I could search for R, nothing else. I can search for like I with nothing else. That IRC user exists. I don't know. Is there someone that exists? I guess there's multiple M starting names. Well, we're missing a new line character, but you get the idea. And very similar to what we were doing here with this injection here, right, where it's just reflecting back, and we're kind of using our user controlled data to do something that the web application probably really doesn't want us to do. We can do the same thing here with this user controlled data in here. It's going to look a little bit different. Rather than starting like some script tags or like an image pointing at something, which probably the web application designer didn't really intend for us to do. Instead, what we might do is, and we'll even curl here, we don't even have to be too fancy about this, localhost 5000, and we'll do that. Query equals hacker. Let's make sure we've got the setup correct. Well, it's not thrilled that we're not logged in. Well, I think it's got to be like search or something. Search, yeah. And now what we can do, if we think about it, what we're running is basically this. So we're running this command right here. And instead of query, it's hacker, right? That's what we just put in there. And if we put an H, it also works. Well, what we can do, right, is this H is under our control. We put whatever the heck we want right here. So for example, what we could do is put a single curly brace here and then space pound to comment this out. And you'll see that now it searched the entire thing, right? Now, maybe that's not so interesting because we also could have just put an empty string here, and I bet it'll do the same thing. Yeah. But we could also, right, so our user input is a little bit kind of tricky. We got to pay attention. Maybe it'd be cool if we could color this. But actually, I'll even copy it into a file and make sure we're all on the exact same page here. this, these three characters are my user input. I could add a semicolon. So now that is also my input. And then I could do a ls. And guess what? We got more input. So this right here, this block right here is what I put in as my search query. And if we look at this, if we parse this as a bash command or a shell command, this suddenly has a very, very different meaning than what it had before. Suddenly we're stopping this grep search and then running another command and then commenting out the rest of this. It's critical that we comment out the rest of this because we don't care about it. Maybe you're in a context where you couldn't comment it out or something. You have to get real clever with it. But let's see what happens if we run this. So if I run this, suddenly it did an ls, right? And just to show that this is no joke here, I can, and we got to be careful because we're running this in bash, so we got to make sure that I type everything correctly, right? I need a single quote here, which is tricky because I'm using single quotes like this. So let's go ahead and here's what we'll do. There's a lot of ways to account for this problem, but what we'll do, well, maybe the simplest is to just URL encode it. So if we URL encode it, right, we all have learned about URL encoding. If I take the hex of the single, right, find the ASCII code, it is a 27. So if I do %27, right, it's the same thing because as we've learned about, we've got the ability to URL encode. And then we'll try semicolon. We'll do %20 as a space. So that's our space encoding. Then we'll do ls. Then we'll do space. And then we'll also throw in this pound character. We got to be a little bit aware of what characters need to be URL encoded. I don't think that quote needs to be URL encoded, but it'll help us because otherwise we got to figure out how to type that single quote, which is a nightmare because we're in a single quote context for typing this curl request. Let's see here. So if I use this as my query, look at this. Suddenly it ran ls. And just to show you, it's because we're in that bash context that we have to be a little bit careful about that single quotes. I could do this without curl. I could do this with like requests. So if I do requests.get localhost, we'll start with this. Import requests. So that does not work. What the heck? Why not? Oh, I gotta say HTTP. We got a response. Our response includes the result of our ls here at the bottom. And I could switch this now back to a single quote if that makes me very happy. Probably I'd get away with this. Maybe I think, yeah, see, we don't even need that. And I don't even think we need that guy. And less sure about that guy. Let's see what happens. Nope, see, now this thing, you got to think about who's interpreting what in what context. There's a whole bunch of mechanisms at play all together. Why did this not work, right? You might be saying to yourself, what the heck, this should work. Well, this pound sign is a specific meaning in a URL context. This pound sign means it's the fragment part of the URL. So we talked about URLs. This is the fragment portion of the URL, which the client is told basically not to send to the server. If there's a fragment in the URL, just don't bother sending it to the server. So what request is probably doing under the hood is just getting that out of there. So in fact, I wonder, I'm not totally confident, we could also imagine, think back to Talking Web, we could netcat this thing. So let's netcat localhost 8000. what is it? 5,000. And do get this. Oh, this isn't going to be good. We're going to need a %20, at least these spaces. Yeah, see, it's not thrilled about that. Hold on. %20 ls %20 pound. Oh wait, we forgot our get. Get this thing HP 1.1. Looks like the server might have gone ahead and stripped out that thing, because if we look at this, right, it's saying this is the command it ran. It ran with grep this, so it ends our quote. So our quote makes it in semicolon space ls space dot star. So it didn't include the pound character. So the server also processed it out. So you know what? We need to URL encode it if we want it to go through. Otherwise, it's a special character. Cool. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. RMRF star, right? We can run whatever command we want now. This is ls. Well, yeah, maybe that's we want to make sure it's clear. Right? ls is probably not all that interesting. What might be more interesting is like, who am I? I mean, that's also not that interesting. But, you know, it could be cat flag. Now, of course, this doesn't have the privileges to run this cat flag here. And we'll see that's why it's actually failing, is this is not returning a good code. But instead, maybe I could do Etsy hosts. And now look at this. I've leaked out a file on the system. Or if this had the privileges, and this challenges, of course, it's the server is running with the privileges to read the flag. So probably that's what we would do. But we can start doing, you know, whatever the heck we want to do here. As you said, RM, RF star. Sweet. Okay, so that's kind of, I got a meeting here. That's why I set that alarm. So I've got to unfortunately not run late on this one. I've got a meeting immediately at noon. So hopefully that's a good primer on some web stuff. I'd be happy to talk about way more stuff. Maybe quickly go over some help for level 7. It's really easy to log in. Okay, we'll very, very quickly look at level 7. Very quickly. Is it here? Code server. Like I got 30 seconds to look at level 7. Level 7. So we might fail out here. Maybe I can point you in some sort of direction. So we're constantly looking for F strings with SQL. I don't know that this is a SQL injection, but it could be. All right, this is F string DBX. We're getting nervous here. Okay, we got user control over this. Now, of course, it might require a little bit of interesting stuff here. However, yeah, it probably isn't the interesting thing, is it just says hello username. So that's probably a little bit of an issue for you. Is that even if you log in, I think there's a previous level, if you log in as the admin user, it says the flag. This, not so much. What I'm going to say about this for you, to get you hopefully on the right track, is, yeah, you didn't find anything interesting in the cookie. Very true. There's nothing actually that useful about being able to log in as the flag user, right? So there's a flag user with a username of flag and a password of the actual flag. You've probably figured out how to log in as the flag user. Turns out not so useful. Who cares? It's still not good enough. There's a time where you need actually to be able to leak out more information from the database than the web application actually normally allows you to do. And that is going to happen in this case. Think more creatively about this expression right here. I know you figured out how to log in as the flag user, but you can induce way more complicated behaviors than just being able to log in. And to that extent, what I'll say is you can use these two lines in tandem. This gives you information about whether it successfully logged in and found a row in here or not. This is one bit of information. The fact that you can get one bit of information is a very, very useful thing. Think about how you can take advantage of that single bit of information and possibly get more bits of information using these two together. All right. Thank you all for attending. I'll, of course, have another office hours next week. Good luck on the assignments, and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.